Happy Friday and welcome to another episode of Searchlight. I'm John Lordan. Thank you so much for joining me here today and for caring about these cases like I do. I had a family member that reached out asking me for help with today's case. This is a case that has just rolled 17 years of this person missing. Some of the family members do not believe that Liza Murphy is alive anymore. And quite honestly, there's some twists in this case that are unbelievable. Is this really a domestic violence issue? Is there something else at play? Let's get into all the details together and try to learn about how we can figure out the truth here, or at a minimum, figure out some type of next steps, some way to be helpful in this case. There is a person of interest, but we don't have any confirmed foul play, and that person of interest no longer in the country. And that we're just scratching the surface. There is so much more to get to. Let's go ahead and get started at NamUs, looking at the profile for Liza Murphy, a white Caucasian female, date of last contact, August 19th, 2007, missing from Emerson, New Jersey at the age of 42. She would be 59 years old at this point. Standing at 5 feet 2 inches tall and weighing somewhere around 106 to 120 pounds, Liza, as you can see in this photo, had bleached blonde hair at the time that she went missing. Her natural hair color, as they're noting here, is brown. She does have long hair. For circumstances of disappearance, Liza Murphy disappeared after an argument with her husband on August 19th, 2007. She left all of her property, cell phone, purse, medication, and vehicle at home. She has not been seen since. Here they're noting her eye color is brown, and I'm not sure why. In the eye description, they're saying that her eyes have also been described as hazel. I'm seeing other postings that are describing them as blue. So we're kind of all over the board in terms of colors, but NamUs is usually pretty good with the official information because they deal directly with law enforcement on these records. So I think we should probably lean in this direction. For tattoos, they're noting an Irish symbol and an evil eye on her back, a rose on her left wrist, and her left ankle has a red bird with vines. They're also noting she was a heavy smoker at the time of her disappearance. For accessories, nothing known. For clothing, last seen wearing a brown tank top shirt, blue denim shorts, and a gray zippered sweatshirt with brown flip-flop type shoes, and that's it. No vehicle. The vehicle was left behind. She did have a vehicle, but it was left at the home. At the Doe Network, we see that they are talking about her maiden last name, which is Stellatos. If this is a case where Liza decided to up and leave, it could be a form of that name that she's using at this point. I can tell you, I don't think that the authorities or her family feel very strongly that that's what's going on in this case. Also, several other pictures that we note here. She also suffered from fibromyalgia, and they're saying that required medication, and that's medication that she also seemed to leave at home. Another little twist in this that we're going to find, and there's this kind of unfortunate war of words that happens around this case because her husband kind of lawyers up. One of those lawyers is kind of vocal and starts just kind of throwing around these ideas about, oh, maybe she's hiding at a friend's house. Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. At some point, there's some more reliable information we're going to bump into that Liza might have been suffering with a form of drug abuse from the medication that she was given for her fibromyalgia. Basically, she had become addicted to that in some way. If she was, and knowing that she is a serious smoker on top of that, why would she leave those items behind? And the story that we're going to hear is, there was a disagreement between a husband and wife. She goes walking off. She leaves everything behind, and that's that. Just for cigarettes alone, and being a former smoker myself, and I haven't smoked in, 18 years at this point. I still have dreams about smoking cigarettes. Like, it is just such an insane addiction. Even thinking about this situation of there being some kind of big argument that they were having, she's not going to grab her cigarettes as she's heading out the door. She's not going to grab her cell phone. Apparently, this is someone that lived on her cell phone as well. The issue that her and her husband were discussing seemingly had to do with her maybe talking to someone else, possibly having an affair. She's not going to take her cell phone with her. There's a lot of things that are really, really hard to understand about this case. They also note here that she is a mother of 3 children, her and her husband, who I believe were married for about 15 years at this time, had 3 kids together. And where this is happening is Emerson, New Jersey, which there are articles like just from a year or two ago about what a wonderful neighborhood this is. This is the type of place where, neighbors kind of keep an eye out for each other. You can get to know people there. And in a way, that dynamic seems to hold true back in 2007. There's a couple of neighbors close to this home around this disappearance that are kind of openly fighting on the internet. And you guys know I don't really lean into that form of social information too much. The short of it is that one of the neighbors is kind of taking the side of the husband, thinking he had nothing to do with it, and thinking that maybe she ran off, or maybe Liza decided to end her own life. And that's that. And this poor guy is stuck with the 3 kids. Another of the neighbors is like, this poor guy, nothing. She's definitely leaning more in the direction that he had something to do with it, that there was always trouble going on at the house. And it's just kind of unfortunate because, like I said, this is also fueled by, we have a couple lawyers that are involved in this, but there is just this big blasting of each other back and forth. Luckily, most of those websites aren't super accessible anymore. You're going to see as we're going through this stuff here today, I'm using Web Archive a lot for pulling these articles back up for you guys. But it's just an unfortunate side effect when the internet kind of comes in that way and is just extremely polarizing on a case of this nature. We're 17 years down the road. Her 3 kids have not heard from her. They're all adults at this point. Husband, still the only named person of interest, not in the country anymore. But to roll it back. So Emerson is a borough in Bergen County in the U.S. state of New Jersey, a suburb in the New York City metropolitan area. As of the 2010 census, there was around 7,400 people living there. And if you're wondering, the name does come from author Ralph Waldo Emerson. The borough calls itself the family town. And kind of to that point, it's weird because when we cover cases that take place in towns of only a few thousand people, sometimes we kind of see the internet take off and people fighting openly. Usually in towns of this size, I don't quite see that, but it seems like Emerson has kind of more of a small town feel. Looking at an article that's resurrected from Web Archive, but it's originally a CNN article. Let's get some more details here. Emerson police received an anonymous phone call August 20th that Murphy had last been seen the previous day. Murphy has made no contact with any of her family members or close friends, which makes us concerned, of course, said Emerson Police Chief Michael Saudino, and more so that she hasn't tried to contact her 3 children. What's interesting about this is who's the person that called that in, and if she went walking off from her husband, we're now in the next day. Why hasn't he made a call to law enforcement about her being missing? Also resurrected from web.archive.org. This is an article from ABC News. Liza Murphy was last seen August 19th, the day that her husband, Joseph, allegedly accused her of having an affair, demanded a divorce, and told her to leave their Emerson, New Jersey home. In a twist that's probably going to send half of you audience members thinking one thing and the other half going in the other direction, 5 days later, Joseph Murphy walked into traffic. And after 2 vehicles swerved out of the way to miss him, he was struck by a fire official's cruiser. So basically, this guy tried to harm himself, walked into traffic, first vehicle misses him, he steps in front. I believe it was a bus for the first vehicle. He steps in front of a Lexus. The Lexus also misses him. And then a fire inspector, a guy driving, it's not like a fire truck for fighting fires. It's, him for him driving around doing inspections. That's the vehicle that actually winds up hitting Joseph. There's an interesting point we're going to learn about the time frame of when this happened as well. But basically, Joseph gets hospitalized and he is at the Hackensack University Medical Center through this. Joseph Murphy was interviewed by authorities basically earlier that week. Since that failed attempt to harm himself, well, he does harm himself, but it seems like he was trying to end his life. He retained a criminal defense lawyer, and he is no longer cooperating with the investigation. His attorney's name, Joseph Rem, he told the Record newspaper that his client is innocent and only hired a lawyer because he felt as if police were treating him like a suspect. Rem said that Joseph Murphy wrote notes to his sister, his children, and his wife. Basically, he was writing them final notes because he did not expect to live through him walking into that road. But it's an interesting point. His attorney is trying to note here, like, why would he write a letter to his wife unless he believed that she was still alive? Some people would say, he could know that she was not alive and still write a note to her. But continuing with an article from Fox News, once again resurrected from Web Archive. Extensive search turned up no leads in the case. Emerson, New Jersey police and other searchers combed a wooded area around the Oradell Reservoir, less than half a mile from the Murphys' home. Though they are looking into whether there was foul play involved in Murphy's disappearance, police have been careful to label this as a missing persons case for now, and they're not identifying anyone as a suspect until more evidence surfaces. They also have not ruled out the possibility that Liza might have decided to end her own life. Murphy was suffering from depression and had apparently fought with her husband just before she vanished. Joseph Murphy told officers that his wife left their home after they had an argument on August 19th. I believe it was around 2 p.m. in the afternoon that this happened. Another thing I was wondering early on was, were the kids there? Apparently not. Joseph had made some arrangements for the kids not to be there so he could confront his wife about this affair that she was having, reportedly. And they're noting here that it was a friend of Liza's, not Joseph himself, that actually winds up reporting her missing. His attorney said that he wouldn't be surprised if Liza was in hiding at a friend's house. Liza Murphy had been suffering from depression, friends and neighbors told Fox News, but police said that they've never been called to the Murphy home about a domestic disturbance, which is interesting because there's other information that basically confirms that police had been called out there for domestic issues of some kind in the past. The couple have 3 children, ages 13, 11, and 7 at the time that this is going on. The Murphy family lives across the street from Liza's brother, who has gotten into tangles with his sister in the past. Police say that he isn't a focus of the investigation, and he was on vacation at the time of her disappearance. So he is cleared of any involvement on this. Continuing at CNN.com, this is an article from a few years after. Police searched extensively, especially around a reservoir not far from her home, but they found nothing. Cadaver dogs caught her scent near the George Washington Bridge, but the trail went cold, police told the family. I have only seen this reported here in this article, and admittedly, there's not a ton of articles that are available on this case anymore, but this is the only place where I'm seeing it. And this is referring to a Nancy Grace episode. I guess it would have been a television episode back then. I don't think podcasts were quite going yet. I know that Liza's friend was interviewed on that as well. And Liza's friend would kind of confirm that, yeah, she was talking to someone else. Maybe not exactly the type of affair that most people would be thinking. But this is the only place where I'm seeing it noted that there was some type of scent that was picked up at the George Washington Bridge. That is a bridge that is basically between New York and New Jersey. And unfortunately, somewhat famous in its own right for people going and jumping from there. It happens approximately, well, back at this time, approximately every 3 to 5 days, there was someone attempting to jump from the George Washington Bridge. Now, I've looked into it a little more, and it seems like they now have mechanisms where they're fully trying to stop. They've got cameras that are watching the bridge. They've got literally officers watching those cameras, and they're deploying Port Authority anytime they see anyone that's lingering or in a position where they might consider jumping. And apparently they have a lot of success in talking those people down. Now I believe there's actually a fence to stop people. There's like an 11-foot high fence, and then it has netting that kind of kicks over the top. So apparently if you're really acrobatic, maybe you can still get up over that. I did see some reference that said that that was temporary and that there was maybe a more permanent solution that was going to be put in. I couldn't really find anything to ratchet down if that has happened yet or not. If you have some details on that, please share it with us in the comments down below. But to the point of, this is an area where unfortunately people do go to jump. We are hearing, at least being reported from friends through the press, that she was dealing with some form of depression. Can we completely write off this possibility? I don't know. I know for the family, it seems like it's written off. I'm seeing comments from her parents in particular. It doesn't seem like people are putting a lot of stock into that. And when you consider that Joseph makes his own attempt in terms of walking into the road, I think for a lot of us, that just makes us wonder, like, why would he choose to do that unless he was involved in this in some way and he was nervous? His lawyer kind of spins it in the direction of, well, this is a guy that's possibly being accused of something that he didn't do. And maybe he's already, feeling upset because his wife has walked off like this. Maybe he does think that she ended her own life and that he was responsible for that in some way. Maybe that's part of the factor in terms of what he goes and does. So it's really hard because we have these for Joseph, a very big known action, but the motivation for it could kind of spin in multiple ways and isn't exactly clear. There's a little piece of information I'm going to save until we hit it in terms of the timing of that might change it a little bit for you guys. But for me, it still kind of leaves me on the fence. Continuing with some more information from the coverage at CNN, she would never leave her 3 children behind voluntarily, her mother insisted. What doesn't make sense is Liza leaving her house without her purse, cell phone, wallet, keys, or cigarettes, she added. She was a heavy smoker, and if she took off after a fight for a walk to cool off, she definitely wouldn't leave without her cigarettes. Liza Murphy and her husband were having marital problems, her family said. Stellatos described Joe Murphy as possessive of his wife, never allowing her to go out with her friends. Police say both the Murphy home and their vehicles have been processed for forensics, but they found no evidence of foul play or struggle. And what I'm curious about there is the time frame, because if we're talking several days later, we know that, Joe is around that week. Could he have hidden some things? Could he have cleaned some stuff up? There's certainly a chance of that. So I'm curious about when exactly that search happened. By December of 2007, the year that she went missing, basically her family is coming out. They're starting to talk about what they're going through, and they're being very clear that they already think that she's gone. Missing mother of 3, Liza Murphy, still has not come home after several months. Sophia Stellatos has come to the realization that she will never see her daughter again. I have no doubt at all that he had something to do with this. I have no proof, but I have no doubt at all. Our life has been holy hell. He has hurt so many people. All the people who knew her are devastated and hurting and praying. It's unbelievable. Liza, 42 years old, comes from a close-knit Greek family with 3 brothers. She was the only girl and the light of our lives, her mother, Sophia, said. Joseph told police that she left after he demanded a divorce because she was having an affair. Sophia dismisses this, saying that Liza had a high school friend that she had met for coffee, and that's all there was to it. So the mother's saying this was not an affair. This was literally just high school friends meeting up. Liza's 3 young children are currently living with Joseph's sister while Joseph recuperates at home from his injuries. The injuries were pretty serious. The firefighter, the fire inspector that basically hit him, said they were surprised that he survived. Like, they had to call equipment out to get him out from under the vehicle. Broken pelvis, injury to his faces. Like, this was a really serious accident. Not accident, I guess. He walks with the aid of a walker, and he's receiving financial aid from his sister because he is a self-employed painter and he isn't working, according to Sophia. Liza's family has been forbidden to see the children, which is adding to their grief. So, of course, they're Joseph's kids. The mother isn't around, and now he's getting to decide who can and can't spend time with those children. Unfortunately, this family would have another tragedy just the following year. Liza had three brothers. In 2008, one of them would pass away. Andrew Stellatos passed away on Sunday, November 16th, 2008, after a brief battle with cancer. Born in New York City, he was the son of Andrew and Sophia Stellatos. So one of the brothers passed away as well. There's an interesting thing that comes up in this article that I found at Irish Central, and it just kind of raises a question for me. See if it does the same for you guys. They're talking about this case, of course, and they're talking about Joe Murphy. Murphy, a painter by trade, stepped in front of a car. His lawyer, Joseph Rem, said that his client is innocent and that he only attempted to end his own life because of the sadness of his wife's disappearance. But Joe Murphy also attempted to end his own life 17 years prior at a time when the couple separated. Rem was also quick to point out that Liza was on antidepressants and had 2 misdemeanor charges against her from 2 neighbors, one of whom was her brother. Police had been called to the Murphy home numerous times over the years for disturbances. So here we're hearing some different information, but it's kind of weird to me when I see information about a missing person and someone lawyers up and then the lawyer is putting out these types of details, kind of smearing the missing person. Like, I could understand why a family would be upset about this kind of stuff. Is it really helpful in terms of understanding the case? I think he's trying to point to this possibility that maybe she ended her own life. What's the benefit of that? I mean, he's got a job to do, right? He's trying to defend his client, but he's also getting in the realm of public conjecture and public conversation, and he's trying to push a particular narrative with that. The family seems to agree that, yes, this couple has always had problems. Liza's father, Andrew, is quoted here saying, "I don't know why they stayed together this long. I guess my daughter just tried to hang in there because of the kids." So back to Joe's story. They argue for about 15 minutes. Liza leaves the house, and now we get kind of an explanation for why he didn't call her in missing. Murphy later told police that his wife had a habit of not coming home, so he didn't suspect that she was missing. What's curious about that is, according to other information that I've run into, the friend that called her in as missing only did so because Liza's daughter was concerned and reached out to the friend, and that triggered the friend to call her missing. So if it was a normal thing that Liza wasn't coming home, why would her daughter get concerned and then ask that friend about her? It seems a little off to me. Murphy, according to court documents, entered the U.S. from Ireland in 1983 as a legal resident. Now, this is where things start to get weird, and I don't quite understand this. Murphy, however, was not always known as Joseph Murphy. His birth name is Delahunty, but he took on the name Murphy after arriving in the U.S. Now, I'm firstborn in the U.S. Actually, half of my family is from Ireland. And it's not uncommon. I've had family that have moved to different countries. It's all throughout my lineage. It's not uncommon for people to change their names. It just isn't. Sometimes it's a matter of them wanting to fit in easier. Delahunty, he wants to be known as Joe Murphy. Okay, maybe that makes some form of sense. And here they're saying that in 2005, he actually filed for an official name change. What I'm curious about is this article came out in 2008, and I found one other article that's referencing that he is known by a different name in 2007. Keep that in mind, because there's a bizarre twist that's going to happen around all this, but it's not going to happen for many, many years, and I'm not exactly sure why. But the other thing it has me wondering about is the possibility that he's changing his name because he's trying to disconnect from a past of some kind. Is there a criminal record in Ireland for him under his original name? I wouldn't think so. Like, the way this article is written, they're saying that, yeah, he was just known by a different name. He filed for an official name change. So we're not talking like identity theft or anything like that with the way this story is being told here. If he was really trying to disconnect from a criminal record, I would assume that, okay, he's going to go full on identity theft. He's going to use someone else's information. That's not exactly the details we're seeing here, but And they even say, according to his petition, Murphy wasn't attempting to escape creditors or criminal prosecution by changing his name. He had no pending lawsuits, bankruptcy proceedings, or criminal charges, as well as no record of conviction. So it seems to me that Irish Central at least did the work of looking into that name change, the last name Delahunty, and saying, okay, like we can't find anything. And on this paperwork, he's saying, I'm not doing it because of these reasons. I would like to think that that would have been checked by them, by the people that were actually processing this name change in 2005. I don't think you could just kind of check off boxes on there. Oh yeah, no, I'm not doing this because I have a pending lawsuit. Maybe you can. I don't know. I'm not an expert in this, but would be different to me if we were talking like full on, he stole someone else's identity. Well, in 2014, the information about that name change is a little different. There has been a stunning twist in the case of a missing mother. Investigators say the woman's husband is not the man that he claims to be. Prosecutors say while investigating her disappearance, they discovered that her husband was living under a false name. He had apparently been using the identity before he even met her. Everyone knew the man as Joseph Murphy, but investigators say he's actually Pascal Delahunty, an Irish citizen living in the U.S. illegally. He assumed the identity of a dead man. Joseph Murphy is someone that is deceased. Joseph Murphy has a different date of birth. And for some reason, Pascal Delahunty is using his identity. If anybody has any information on the disappearance of Liza Murphy, please contact the authorities. We'd appreciate it, said Liza's brother, Anthony. And the other surviving brother, Michael, made serious accusations in a phone interview, even though Delahunty has never been charged in his wife's disappearance. I think he did something very wrong, Michael said. I'm a Greek. When they describe a Greek tragedy, I guess you can take a picture of our family. Really, really troubling. So again, that's just pulling me back to, would there be some other record? Is there some reason why? Why is, like, now we're talking identity theft. We're not talking kind of the conditions I was sharing with you guys, like, my last name actually is supposedly derived from a different name from other immigrants that moved to Ireland hundreds of years ago or something. This seems different to me. This is straight up identity theft. Why? Grand jury indicts husband of missing Emerson woman on fraud charges. And here is a photo of Pascal Delahunty. Delahunty took the name from a childhood friend who died in a motorcycle crash. It's interesting they say childhood friend because, well, I guess he could be. I think the birth date is off by about 5 years. So basically, Pascal winds up being 5 years younger also by taking Joseph's identity. Using the name Joseph Murphy, Delahunty became a lawful permanent resident, a green card holder in 1990, authorities said. He was arrested this past Christmas Eve after trying to obtain a driver's license. So there's just a few weird things to me. It's weird that there's information from back in 2007 and 2008 that are showing this name discrepancy. And I don't know why all of a sudden it's 2014 before there's real action being taken here, on him. Maybe it's because of this step of him trying to get a driver's license. Like maybe, I don't know, but I would assume it was fraud for him to get the green card as well. As this is being processed, Emerson, man whose wife disappeared, could be deported. So, and keep in mind, like he's basically being held at this point. I think they've got, they wanted like a $300,000 bail on him. I think they lowered it to $100,000, but I don't think he had the money, and he's basically in jail going through this process. One of the charges pending against him for displaying a driver's license and social security card in the name of Joseph A. Murphy is considered serious enough to carry a prison term. Delahunty's oldest daughter lives in Emerson with her younger sister, over whom she has full custody, defense attorney Joseph Raya said today. So he gets a different attorney to handle this. And at this point, this is happening. I think this article also this one's from 2015. So he's been in jail for a number of months at the time of this article. At least 2 of the kids out of the house, but one of them getting full custody of the younger sister and basically taking care of her. Just makes you wonder about what dynamic is going on within that family. And I mean the kids in particular, in terms of belief structure around their mother's disappearance. And now these charges with their father. Like, why? Why are you taking this guy's name and identity? I don't understand. Emerson Painter admits living under phony ID. As part of a plea deal with prosecutors, Pascal Delahunty must self-deport to Ireland, then present himself to the U.S. Embassy in Dublin, where he swore that he will renounce all rights to his false American citizenship. So at this point, basically been in jail for a year or more. Meanwhile, the investigation of the sudden disappearance of Liza Murphy in 2007 was continuing. I'm seeing several notes to them saying it's continuing, but there are no new details that are being shared in terms of what's happening around that. Liza's two brothers, Anthony and Michael, went to court along with her cousin, Diane Hobbing. And Diane called that plea basically a hollow victory, but it's better than nothing. Should conclusive proof of Delahunty's possible guilt in his wife's disappearance emerge, Barron County Undersheriff Joseph Horniak told Daily Voice he'll be extradited and tried. And the attorney, Raya, his new attorney for this particular thing, and I think his former attorney actually also publicly comments about this. And I find it kind of difficult to not believe this myself. Like, was this a position that law enforcement had to take because they couldn't find the evidence to really prosecute him for harming Liza or ending Liza's life? But this is something they kind of could get him on and at least get him out of the country. What I'm curious about in that is, you get him out of the country. Is that better for the investigation? I don't know. And I can tell you, I don't want to name the family member that asked me to do this in the comments they made about this, but I know for me personally, it would be hurtful to think that, wow, this person committed fraud here in the US, does wind up serving a year, basically. 388 days, I think he spent in jail. But then he's sent back to Ireland, and it's just like, okay, free and clear, go ahead, live your life. I don't understand why he stole the identity in the first place. And I really, really hope there was some form of investigation. I have to imagine there was, especially with him having to go back to Ireland. I would hope that the authorities out there would be all over those records and trying to figure out, what was he trying to run from? It doesn't make sense. There was no reason. He could have just come over legally as himself, processed a real name change, and gotten everything all on the up and up. What was the benefit of taking a dead man's identity? I don't understand. Could it have been to premeditate a crime of some kind? Maybe he hadn't committed a crime in the past, but hey, if I am going to pull something, I'm going to do it under this name and then I'll disappear. I don't know. It's blowing my mind. And on top of all that, yes, we have Liza missing. We've got no real solid information. That one little mention in terms of the bridge. We've got the search that was happening in the forest around the reservoir. And there's just no other real mention about possible locations where her body might be outside of this one additional hit. And I don't think it's a coincidence that we have a cadaver dog hit that prompts digging in the Emerson woods. And this is happening the same month as basically Delahunty being processed and kicked out of the country. A law enforcement source with direct knowledge of the investigation told Daily Voice that a cadaver dog hit on a spot in the woods, bringing the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office and the County Sheriff's Crime Scene Unit. They wouldn't say what, if anything, that they found, or whether the search was connected to the sudden disappearance of Liza Murphy back in 2007. I don't think it's a coincidence, but I also think that especially if Liza's remains were found, that would have been publicly disclosed, and we did not have that happen. Now, NorthJersey.com did some reporting on this, and they spoke to someone that was working on the case that was retired at this point, and they kind of opened up about what they were thinking with this case, and it gives us just a little more detail into why they were really considering Joseph Pascal, a serious person of interest with this case. As police searched for Liza Murphy in the woods surrounding her home in Emerson, her husband, the man known as Joseph Murphy, parked his Benjamin Moore paint truck at a Westwood bank and then stepped in front of a bus on Old Hook Road. It's amazing that he wasn't killed. Were these the actions of a man sick with grief, or rather of someone consumed with guilt? That's one of the biggest questions outside of where is Liza. That's the second biggest question. And it's weird because knowing the answer to that would be a very big pointer to Liza's fate. Attempts to answer that question have led authorities, including the retired Emerson detective who said last week that Joseph Murphy was the primary person of interest in the Liza Murphy investigation, down a path as haunting as it has been fruitless. Despite the substantial resources that the Emerson Police and the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office poured into the case, authorities never found any physical evidence linking Murphy to his wife's disappearance, nor have they found a trace of the mother of three. Another possibility I just want to throw out here, because I know I haven't been clear about this. The dog hitting the scent at the bridge doesn't mean that Liza jumped in herself. It could be that her body was taken to that spot and then put in the water there as well. So just another possibility with what's going on with that potential hit at the bridge. But the fate of Liza Murphy is no clearer today than it was the day she went missing, and those close to her are still desperate for information that could untangle the mystery. I wish they would find Liza, sobbed Donna Woods, who still lights a candle every morning for her longtime friend. It's terrible that her mother and father passed away without knowing what happened to her. And I don't want to die not knowing what happened to her. I need closure. Her friends need closure. Her family needs closure. And that's definitely true because her family is literally still reaching out, asking for help as of today. George Buono was a detective sergeant when he received a call that Liza Murphy was missing. From the start of his investigation, he said that he was suspicious of the story that Delahunty told police. Delahunty told authorities that he arranged for the couple's 3 school-age children to leave their Broad Street home for a few hours, and he used that time to confront his wife with evidence that she was cheating on him. He had recorded her telephone conversations, he later admitted to police, and according to his attorney back at that time, Rem, he told her that he wanted her out of the house by the end of the week. So a little bit of more detail there. The argument lasted about 15 minutes, Delahunty told authorities. Then he said Liza walked out of the house with only the clothes that she was wearing, leaving her cell phone, cigarettes, and prescription medication behind. That just doesn't jibe as far as I'm concerned, said Buono, who retired from the Emerson department. Liza, if you knew her, she was a person who had some medical issues. She was a heavy smoker. She lived on her phone, and she took prescription medication fairly regularly. I could understand and foresee having an argument with your spouse and abruptly leaving the home, but after a few minutes or after an hour or two, you say, okay, I need my cigarettes, I need my cell phone, and if I'm going to leave, I know I'm leaving for good, I'm going to get my medication. And none of that happened. The other thing, that bridge, I think, is 10 miles away, over 10 miles from Emerson. So I don't know, this whole story about that she got to that bridge, didn't have her car, went walking for 10 miles. I don't know. Liza Murphy allegedly walked out of the house on a Sunday. By noon on Monday, Delahunty still had not reported his wife missing. It made our job a lot more difficult, Buono said of the delay. Instead, police were tipped off to her absence by an anonymous caller. Her friend, Woods, says that it was actually her who had received a distressed call from the couple's daughter. So one of the kids noticed something. And that's kind of what made that phone call happen. Authorities combed through the couple's house, Delahunty's van, and Liza Murphy's Jeep. They examined call records and followed up on reports of possible sightings as far away as Chicago. We never came up with anything, he said. But it was during that search that Delahunty decided to go step into the road. And that answers one big question for us, which was, when did the forensic search happen? So I'm seeing it reported it was 4 or 5 days later. She goes missing on Sunday. I believe it's Thursday that he goes walking into the road. at about 10 a.m. That's literally the same time that police are processing his home and his vehicles. So is that a motivating factor? But we still kind of wind up at the same catch spot. Is that a motivating factor because he's worried they're going to find something then and he really did harm Liza? Or is that a motivating factor because it's clear that he's being considered a suspect and that is the motivating factor? I don't know. Very, very hard to answer that for sure, but pretty big piece of the puzzle for me in terms of the timing, because law enforcement not finding anything 4 or 5 days later, he had a ton of time in the house. He could have done all kinds of stuff. Guy's a painter, knows how to clean things up, knows about things that might do a better job at cleaning things up than maybe a general person could. Paint stripper, paint thinners, all kinds of different stuff like that. I mean, it's really, really tough. There's already a gap, and law enforcement is saying this guy delayed us a day by not calling us, but then we have a search of that property not happen for several more days after that. So I'm not surprised that nothing was found in the house. Buono, the retired Emerson detective, confirmed that Liza was in a relationship with a Westwood man at the time that she went missing. He cooperated fully, and we ruled him out as a suspect in her disappearance. So he's saying there was a relationship as well. They checked into that guy. He was cleared. Liza Murphy was known to authorities in the years before she disappeared. She faced 2 pending disorderly persons complaints filed by her estranged brother who lived across the street and by a neighbor who often feuded with her. Fortunately, I think that's a neighbor that took to social media, and basically any place where someone was talking about this case, they were firing off a missive about their beliefs. In 2005, a New Jersey hospital worker told the division that Liza Murphy had called a hotline saying that she wanted to end her own life. Liza was involuntarily committed to a hospital and agreed to undergo therapy and substance abuse treatment as part of a case plan developed by the agency. Closer to the time of her disappearance, Liza was trying to kick an addiction to prescription drugs that started during treatment for fibromyalgia, police have said. She was also being treated for depression. So, and that's part of the challenge with this case, like, especially in terms of public perception. There's information out there that she was a person that was struggling. So you couple that up with this thing about, oh, we've got, the dog detecting her at the bridge. There's still some big logistics problems in that story for me. Notwithstanding these challenges, Woods said that Liza never would have walked away from her children. And basically, Buono echoes that statement. With all her faults, I'll say that she loved her children, and I don't think that she would have abruptly left them like that. Based on his experience in law enforcement and his knowledge about the case, Buono said that the chances that Liza are still alive are slim. I'm hoping that someday somebody will slip, he said. Referring to De La Hunte, he added, if he committed this crime, I don't think he committed it perfectly. I believe that means that he's waiting for that piece of information out there that could maybe bring this home for law enforcement. And of course, if you're the person that has that info, we've had the number on screen this whole time, please pick up the phone. There are family members desperately waiting for that phone call. So please find it in yourself to pick up that phone and get that information in play. Now, Donna Woods, when she was on Nancy Grace's program, did bring up the affair as well. She admitted that Liza had been having an affair, but said that it was not sexual. Rather, it was an extremely close friendship with a friend. So perhaps more of what would be called an emotional affair nowadays. And that kind of seems in line with what Liza's mother was saying as well. Could De La Hunte have just assumed the worst in that case, thought that there was much more that was going on there? Yes. Or could the emotional affair have been enough that, that was the straw that broke the camel's back and, he was ready to end the marriage or even more? I don't know. So we get to 2016. In a sparsely attended courtroom, Pascal de la Hunty was sentenced to 388 days that he had already served basically in jail for using false papers. He was ordered to self-deport to Ireland within 2 weeks. And this hastened an end to a nearly decade-long and inconclusive investigation into de la Hunty's possible involvement in the disappearance of his wife, Liza Murphy. The state, at least on the plus side, the state did acquire a sample of his DNA. His biometrics information will be forever in the government's database, and that makes it impossible for him to re-enter the United States, this according to his attorney. If he was to attempt to, he would be caught at the border and incarcerated. And they're also noting here that de la Hunty remained silent through that 17-minute hearing. When asked by the judge if he would like to be heard, basically his attorney answered for him, saying, "No, Your Honor." And de la Hunty just sat there. They're saying he betrayed little emotion. Liza's brother Anthony said that the sentencing brought little closure for him or his family members. "We're not happy, that's for sure," he said. Raya, de la Hunty's attorney, was more sympathetic. He's lost his family in essence. He's lost his privilege to be in the United States, regardless of how he obtained it. It's kind of a big oversight to me. And with a giant question mark on it still for why he would do that. But back to the lawyer's comment. He's a broken man at this point. Everything has been taken from him. There's nothing more that we can take from him. And I don't necessarily agree with that. If he is responsible for what happened to Liza, he shouldn't be free. He shouldn't be walking around in Ireland, working, doing whatever he's doing. It just doesn't make sense. There is more that could be taken from him. And I think that's why we have family members that are still reaching out for help, still trying to raise awareness to this case and asking for our help in doing that. And with that, I'm asking for your help. This is a case that is pretty old at this point. There's not a lot of current media on it. Please take a moment, share this with people that you think would be moved by this story, possibly people that you know in New Jersey. Maybe someone has some information there. Maybe this guy spoke to someone at some point. Someone's sitting with a piece of this puzzle that can help the authorities move things forward. That's really what we're hoping for here. Of course, if you want to be part of the conversation, you can join the conversation in the comments down below. I know this is a tough case, and I do expect a split in the audience. Let's just be respectful to each other about each other's opinions. Healthy debate is great. We just don't need to get into, name calling and stuff like that. So let's please keep it respectful. And that's what I love about you guys. When we look at those conversations, they're helpful. The families always tell me about, what your audiences, they're bringing up some really important points, some things that we haven't considered before. So please keep it respectful so that they can get to that point of processing that information in that way. You guys are really good at it already. I just got to say the reminder every now and then. In the links down below, also the Charlie Project write-up on this, and there is a Web Sleuth thread. It's only a few pages long. Most of the articles it's referring to are gone at this point. I've kind of pulled back everything that I can to be as helpful as possible. And to that family member that reached out, I hope this video helps your cause. I hope that the surviving family members get the answers that they've been waiting for. I would love to see the news that Liza has been found and one way or another is being brought home. That's what I'm hoping for. There are 3 children out there that don't know where their mother is. That's really what this case boils down to. Thank you guys so much for joining me here on today's Searchlight. Please have a wonderful weekend. Come back and join us again for another case next week, right here on the LordanArts channel.